Hello and welcome to Oh the Horror, where we all go a little mad sometimes. I'm Jack Ellis.
And I'm Matt Ellis.
And from all of us here at the Oh the Horror team, we all hope you had a happy Valentine's Day. This week we will be reviewing Fatal Attraction, almost the anti-Valentine's Day movie. For a anti-Valentine's Day group of individuals. This is a holiday that I've never exactly enjoyed, but it still has a good aesthetic to it, and I think we can make something out of it. This is almost certainly coming out after Valentine's Day because we're recording it after Valentine's Day. So, sorry, our schedule is all kinds of fucked up. But yeah, this movie stars Michael Douglas and who is Glenn Close. Glenn Close. I was gonna say Meryl Streep, but I was confused the two. Yeah. So let's just get started. So the family, this movie starts with the family getting ready for a party in New York City. We meet Dan Gallagher, an attorney, and his wife, Beth, and their daughter, Ellen. Their daughter actually stays behind with the babysitter, Christine, who shows up right before they leave. Once they go to a party, Dan meets Alex Forrest, who is the editor for the company Dan represents. They briefly talk, and Dan goes back to his wife, and they leave the party. The next day, we see that Beth and Ellen are leaving to go to Beth's parents' house for the weekend, with Dan staying behind due to work obligations. As an introductory scene, this part I really do like, because it has the same aesthetic as something like 1987's Wall Street, which Michael Douglas was also in, or American Psycho, or The Wolf of Wall Street. Sort of the yuppie culture of 80s New York and stock trading and lawyers and that sort of thing. So I do really like that. I mean, the room just smells of cocaine. You can smell it through the TV. But, what do you think of this opening scene?
I liked the opening scene. It was that party they went to, like you said, it was... What I really noticed about it, though, was just how freaking crowded it was.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how could anybody possibly be enjoying themselves at one of those things? Like, you know, there was like, you could see all the smoke in the place from everyone smoking. You know, whenever you wanted to go anywhere, you pretty much had to, like, push and shove your way around. It's
all the powder cocaine, man.
Well, yeah, it's like, I can't believe before COVID we actually used to have parties like that. But the one thing I actually really did like about the opening scene was how, you know, they really made Alex Forrest seem like someone who is not who we will end up finding out she is later in the movie. Like, the actress who plays her does a really good job at making her seem like somebody who is perfectly normal when you first meet them, but then is like, just like batshit when we get down the road. And it even does the same with Dan Gallagher. Like, you really would not think he's as sleazy as he turns out to be. He really does seem like a genuine family man. So, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of how it is with a lot of, you know, sociopaths, is they really seem like they're, like, incredibly charming and intelligent until you really get to see what's underneath. So I'll say kudos to both Glenn Close and Michael Douglas on that.
Yeah. And Dan then goes to a work meeting, which starts with everyone making fun of one of their coworkers in a neck brace. It is rumored that he is actually in the brace because his and his wife injured each other in bed. How does one get in a neck break in a sexual injury?
They're probably just into some really kinky shit.
Like, do you think they were, like, they both simultaneously pulled each other's necks while 69ing.
Probably.
That'd be kind of funny.
Where do you are 18. Where do you come up with this stuff?
It's just a thought. But
you need to quit thinking so much.
Anyway, Alex Forrest showed up at the meeting standing in for someone who could not be there. After the two meet again outside, after the meeting, they agree to go to dinner and afterwards have an affair at her place. The next day, they meet up again and do the same song and dance. As Dan tries to leave, she expresses her disdain with that he always leaves right after. They get into an argument about this, and right before he leaves, she confronts him with slit wrist. Dan calms her down and treats her wounds before finally leaving. This is an interesting little scene here because they spend this weekend, and it's almost something you'd read about in like an airport paperback or something like that. It's something sort of like taboo or something like that. And then the harsh reality comes in that, she will use guilt and fear to try to keep him in her sight. And I remember the first time I watched this, the slit wrist thing actually really surprised me. And, I mean, the dude's not great, but she is, like, pretty crazy. So, I do really, I think the scene is interesting, and I do like it, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it too, even though, it did freak me out too, and I gotta say, it really is a testament to how crazy this woman really is by the fact that not only she cut herself, but she slit her wrist just so she could get a guy to stay at her apartment with her. Like, that's pretty fucked up.
Like, that's just probably the worst example of not respecting yourself.
Like, right, yeah, and I gotta say, though, it's kind of weird that Dan was willing to jeopardize his marriage for, well, her. I'm sorry, but she's really just not that attractive. Like,
yeah, I mean, I tend not to, like, I try to stay away from saying shit like that, but, like, I mean, I don't really get it either. I mean, usually in a movie like this, she would be, like, the ideal, temptress, think, like, Love Actually or something like that. But it almost looks like she's older than him, which is a little weird.
Yeah.
But, yeah, in the coming days, Alex consistently calls Dan and even comes to his office to try to make things right. Even invites him to go with her to an opera called Madame Butterfly. He turns down her offer and they supposedly part ways. However, she still calls him now at his house since he ignores work calls from her. She's even able to get him to meet her in person, where she tells him she is pregnant with his baby. He tries to convince her to terminate the pregnancy, but he insists on keeping it. During these different situations, Alex's descent into madness is also shown. When she is seen sitting on her bedroom floor with Madame Butterfly playing on her stereo, and her tickets to the opera sitting on a drawer, implying she didn't even go to the performance. She is also flipping her lamplight on and off over and over again while sitting with a blank but sad look on her face. The slow descents and the, constant stalking I do really enjoy because, you don't see very many thriller type movies where the woman is the one acting like this, except for maybe like Gone Girl, so it's different, and I think it does that really well. And uh, I do sort of. It just ups her crazy that she almost uses a baby as like a pawn in this chess match to get her to stay with him, or to get him to stay with her. And, you know, again, that just shows how unhinged she is.
Well, I mean, she did say that, like, she felt like this would be her last chance to become a mother, so
Yeah.
that may have been part of it, too. And, I mean, another question is, was this actually her descent into madness, or, like, was she just always this crazy?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this is the first person she's done this with.
Right.
And, yeah, just showing, how crazy she is going by having her sit in her room, flipping the lights on and off is, it's a scene that really gets under my skin, and now I can't, I have a lamp in my room, which has a button that turns it on, and I can't, play with that without thinking of this scene. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this scene. What did you think about it?
I liked it, too. I mean, that's definitely new. That's original, the idea of someone just sitting in their room, flipping their light switch on and off, and, there's no other explanation for why someone would do that than besides that they're going insane. So, and I like how it does show a good gradual process of her going insane. She starts off doing things like cutting her wrists, sitting in her room, turning her lights on and off, things that really aren't they aren't healthy, they aren't typical, but they aren't really completely crazy like it's gonna get, so I do like that.
Yeah. And then Alex then shows up at Dan's house and is seen talking to his wife about living in their apartment since the Gallaghers are planning to move into the country. Later that day, Dan confronts Alex at her place and even threatens to tell his wife about them. And he responds by threatening her life. As she shouts, "I will not be ignored," Dan soon gets a cassette tape in the mail with Alex venting her hatred for Dan. He listens to this in the car as he is followed by her to his home, and she looks through the window to see Dan showing the family their new bunny. Next day, Dan goes to the cops about a stalker, but they can't do anything about it without proof of wrongdoing. This is also after she ruins his car by pouring acid. Yeah, so again, the stalking, the harassment, and, I do like the addition of her following him home because, it can be pretty easy to get followed in New York City with just how many cars there are. And, this movie speaks to something that does go on a lot in our society. Keep in mind, I do not want to get political with this, and I'm not a meninist, you would call. But a lot of times, in cases of either harassment or abuse by a woman against a man, the cops are less likely to believe the man. And there are less services provided for the man who might be suffering from this. And I think that actually, in most horror movies, the cops are shown being dumb just as sort of a plot device. But in this one, there's an actual tangible purpose. And I do like that because it's sort of like Get Out, because there's a pre-existing reason why this person may not be believed by the cops, rather than just because it's a horror movie or because it's a thriller. So I do actually really appreciate that addition. And yeah, her harassment just goes on for so long, and she just does so much crazy shit. It's just so, it's so scary to watch. Just this person who he he's sleazy. He's a douchebag. I'll say that. But I mean, he made a mistake, not knowing the implications of it, and now he's just being, his life is being destroyed because of it. So yeah, that's what I think.
I have to agree with what you said. I mean, yeah, it's like it seems to me if a woman were to come into the station saying there was a guy who never stopped calling her house, was following her around, it seems to me like the cops would just be all over that. But when he came in, he really wasn't taken all that seriously. In fact, the cop even implied that he should just tell his wife that he was cheating. So yeah, and I mean, I can kind of understand why she would be really upset at him for, because he pretty much just hit it and quit it,
Yeah.
pumped and dumped. He decided to come and go, and yeah, and it's also one thing that I thought about the scene where she actually saw his whole family for the first time is like, have you ever noticed, like, I had trouble, I thought that their daughter was actually a boy when I first saw.
Well, I saw the Family Guy parody of this movie before I saw the actual movie, and in that one, the daughter is played by Stewie, so that might be why I thought he was a boy. But
I mean, it's like, I'm surprised she didn't look in the window and see, like, oh, that's their daughter? I mean, that's his kid? Maybe I should get this abortion. But, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about this part.
bust a nut and out he strut.
Did you really just think of that?
Yeah.
Damn. Oh, and by the way, did you notice in the Family Guy version of Fatal Attraction that they had both Alex Forrest and Beth Gallagher be portrayed by Lois?
Oh shit, they did do that.
Yeah.
Is that the one where they said, man, we really do need more female characters on this show?
No, that was when they did Cinderella.
Yeah. But anyway, for her next trick, Alex puts their new pet bunny, she puts it in a pot of boiling water and on the stove and just leaves it. Beth is the first one to notice and is horrified. Ellen, of course, is also pretty upset. At this point, Dan decides to tell Beth everything and she kicks him out of the house. She also threatens Alex's life if she ever comes near them again. The next day, we see that Alex has kidnapped Ellen and taken her to a theme park, but drops her off at the Gallagher house the same day. Beth notices she is gone when she tries to pick Ellen up from school, but can't find her while she is driving around in a panicky state, crashes her car, and has to go to a hospital. After visiting her, Dan breaks into Alex's apartment and tries to kill her, but stops himself from strangling her before she dies. He then leaves slowly, and goes back to the cops, and this time they decide to go after her. Dan is now back home with his family and taking care of Beth while she recovers. However, Alex shows up in the bathroom where Beth is about to take a bath and even starts cutting herself while saying things to Beth like, "What are you doing here?" as if it were her house. Dan notices something is wrong when the overflowing water from Beth's bath leaks through the first floor ceiling. Alex has already started stabbing Beth when he gets there. Dan then tries to drown Alex in the bathtub and seems to have succeeded until Alex jumps out of the tub at Dan but gets shot to death by Beth. The authorities come and take Alex's body away, and then the Gallaghers are seen all going into the kitchen while Dan has his arm around Beth, implying they might not separate after all. It then closes on the Gallagher family portrait and credit end. I think the end of this movie is where it really hits its stride. And yeah, like, I feel like when shit actually hits the fan is when she abducts his kid, and then he tries to get revenge. And that scene when they're all at the house recovering, you know that she'll be there any minute, and that's a really suspenseful thing because he's got like his gun out, and they're almost like waiting for her. And I like the scene in the bathroom. It's a good fight scene that's also pretty realistic. It's not like the standard like slasher villain takes 18 stab wounds, gets caught on fire and then still has that one last scare. All she was just under a bathtub for a couple seconds. And we still got that like one final scare, as Randy from Scream would say. And yeah, and the choice to end on the Gallagher family portrait, I think, was probably the best way to end this movie. Because it could either mean that they will become a family again and even become stronger through this experience, or the family is now a broken husk of what it once was. You can interpret it either way. But, yeah, what do you think of this last scene? And then we'll go over final thoughts.
Well, yeah, I thought the last scene was pretty good. I mean, it showed at the very end that Alex, she went from just being, incredibly emotionally unstable to, like, not even having a good grip on reality. So, like, she was just completely batshit by the end of it. But, yeah, I like the end. The thing is, Alex, when she was being drowned, it's pretty easy to kind of fake being dead when you're drowning. Like, you can just quit moving for a few seconds, wait for them to let their guard down, and then attack again. But, so yeah, and that's pretty much what I thought of it.
Yeah, well, anyway, this movie is great. It's it's a decent thriller, and it's a time capsule of the time it was made in. And so, honestly, I think this movie knocked it out of the park, and it's a pretty good Valentine's Day movie too.
I really like. Go ahead.
No, you go.
And I was just gonna say, and I really like the moral of the story, which is don't stick your dick in crazy.
Yep, you gotta agree with that, huh? But anyway, I would go and give this movie let's say an 8 out of 10.
I'd give it an 8 out of 10 too.
Well, anyway, this has been Oh the Horror, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I'm Jack Ellis.
And I'm Matt Ellis.
This has been Oh the Horror. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.